Hello my fellow fashion designers, welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be drafting a basic bodice by Natalie Bray. So this is the picture of the basic bodice that we are going to be drafting. In my opinion, the method of drafting a basic bodice by Natalie Bray is very similar to the method by Winifred Aldrich's method. My name is Q and this is Q's Beyond Fashion. Let's get started. When drafting the basic bodice, Natalie Bray was using centimeters. This is the table of measurements by Natalie Bray. I've taken the table of measurements by Natalie Bray and I've converted it to inches. For the benefit of bigger women, I have graded the measurements. If you want me to send you this graded table up to a bust of 52 inches, just leave a comment in the comment section with your email address. So today we are going to be drafting my own basic bodice and my bust is 40 inches. We are going to be making use of this table and we are going to be using Roman figure 6 with a bust of 39 and 3/8 of an inch. I felt like that is the closest to the 40 inches of my bust. Now to make this easier, I've already copied the measurements onto this paper right here, but for the bust, the waist and the hips, I've written my exact measurement, not the ones that are written on the table. Same thing applies to the waist length. That is the length from the back of the neck up to the waist. In this case, on the paper, it is 16 and 1/8. But for me, because I'm a shorter person, I decided to use my exact measurement, which is 15.5 inches. Then the rest of the measurements are the one which I took from the table. Next here, I've already done the calculations that we are going to be using later on. For example, on the bust circumference, Natalie Bray suggests that you have to add an ease of 10 centimeters, which is 4 inches. But after drafting the pattern several times and then sewing it together, I discovered that the 4 inches is too big for the ease around the bust. So I decided to reduce the ease to just 2 inches. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take a rectangular pattern paper, just like this one, and make sure that the length of the pattern paper is at least 30 inches or more. When it comes to the width of the pattern paper, make sure that the width is at least bigger than the hip circumference divided by 2. So I have to make sure that the width of my pattern paper is at least 23 inches plus about 4 or 5 inches for the margin right here, and we also have to leave margin on that other side. To get started, we are going to measure about 1 inch on the side of the paper, and then you draw a straight line which is going to be your starting point. And then also at the top we are going to do the same thing, measure about 1 inch or more, and then draw a straight line again. This is going to be our starting point. So we are going to start by drafting the back of our basic bodice on the left, and then we are going to draft the front of our basic bodice on the right. And this line is our center back, CB. On the center back line, we are going to mark point 0 from the top of the line. This is the top of our line. So we are going to measure down 1 and 3/8 of an inch and then mark point 0. We measure 1 and 3/8 of an inch. Then we are going to label it as point 0. And after that, we are going to measure from point 0, going to measure the following points. We are going to measure the armhole depth, which in my case is 8 and 7/8 of an inch. That is right here. So we are going to measure down 8 and 7/8 of an inch like so. We are starting the measurements now from point 0. And then we're going to measure the waist length. That is the measurement from the neck up to the waist at the back. And in my case, it is 15.5 inches. So that is what we are going to measure starting from 0. We measure down 15.5 inches. And then we make a mark. And then next we are going to measure the hip length from the waist. That is 8 and 7/8 of an inch. Now we have to take note that that measurement was not included in the table of measurements by Natalie Bray. So it is also not included in the table of measurements that I've already prepared. So what you have to do is that you have to take that measurement on yourself. You have to measure yourself from your waist up to your hip. And then you are going to write down that measurement. In most cases for adults, the measurements from the waist to the hips is between 8 and 3/4 of an inch up to 9 inches. In my case, it is 8 and 7/8 of an inch. So I'm going to take that measurement from the waist up to the hip, and in my case, it is 8 and 7/8 of an inch. And then next, we are going to come back to our measurements right here. Then we are going to compare and find the bigger value between the hip circumference and the bust circumference. So my bust circumference plus the ease is 42 inches, and then my hip circumference plus ease is 46 inches. And obviously the hip circumference plus ease, which is 46 inches, is bigger than the 42 inches. So I'm going to use the bigger value, which is my hip circumference. So finding half of that, that is half of 46, we are getting 23 inches. So we are then going to take the 23 inches and measure it across as the width of our pattern. Okay, measure 23 inches and mark. I'm just going to repeat the same thing, maybe along the waist, so I can be able to draw a straight line. And then we're going to draw a straight line. So after drawing this line, remember we said this side we are going to have our front. Then this line right here is going to be our center front. So we are going to label it as CF, like that. We are going to draw straight lines from the center back line up to the center front. So to make sure that our lines are straight across, I'm just going to measure from the beginning. That is from the line at the top. In my case, the measurement is 10 1/4. So I'm going to take the same measurement and measure it on the center front like this. 10 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to draw a straight line like so. So I'm going to label it as a bust line. Then next we are going to come down to the waist. We do the same thing. We measure the waist length from the top. In my case, it is 16 7/8 inch. So I come to the center front. I measure 16 7/8 inch. And thereafter, we draw a straight line. So we label the line as the waistline. Next, to draw the hip line again, we're going to measure the measurement from the waistline up to the hip, which in my case is 8 7/8 inch. And then we're going to mark the same thing this side, 8 7/8. And then we're going to draw a straight line. And this one we are going to label as our hip line. And then next we are going to mark and then draw the back line that is halfway between 0 and the bust line. So we have 0 right here, and then we have our bust line. So we are going to find half of this distance. You can just place your tape measure and then divide it by 2 like so. So this one right here is going to be our back line. And then it says here, draw lines halfway to the right. That means we are going to draw straight lines up to somewhere just before halfway. So I'm going to use my square ruler and square a line like so. So this line, we are going to label it as our back line. And then next we are going to mark and then draw our shoulder line. Our shoulder line is 1.25 inches for all sizes. We are starting from 0. We measure down 1.25 inches like so. And then again we are going to draw a straight line across up to halfway, just like the previous line, which was the back line. And then we are going to label this line as our shoulder line. And then next we are then going to square a line which is going to be between 4 and 5 inches from 0. This is going to be our neckline. We are squaring a line from 0. So the line is going to be between 4 and 5 inches. Measuring 4.5 inches with my tape measure. And I'm just going to mark the end of the line and then I draw it up to 0. Like that. And then we are going to mark the neck width on the neckline. My neck width is 3 inches. So I'm going to mark the 3 inches. And then we square up by 3/4 inch. From the end of our neck right here, we are then going to square up 3/4 inch. And then we go up and we mark that point like so. And then maybe you can use a ruler to draw a line. This point, we are going to label it as NP. And then on the back line, from the center back right here, we are going to measure half the back measurement, and my back width is 15 inches. We did the calculations here. We divided the back width by 2 and the answer was 7.5 inches. So I'm going to measure 7.5 inches along the back line. Next, it says I have to square the line up and down up to the shoulder line and also the bust line. That means I will take the same measurements along the bust line, which is 7.5 inches, and also along the shoulder line. And thereafter, I draw a straight line. And then next, it says along the bust line, which is right here, it says from the line that is going up, the line that we have just drawn right now, we are going to draw the underarm point starting from this point right here. Its back underarm point is 2 3/8 of an inch. We are going to take that measurement, 2 3/8 of an inch. Label it as U. And then it says next we come back to the shoulder line. We are going to mark half the back width. That is half the back width. Remember, it's exactly this measurement. And then we are going to add 3/4 of an inch. And then we make a point and label it as SP for the shoulder point. So because we already have half the back width, which is this one, from there we are going to add 3/4 of an inch. So measure 3/4 and we mark this new point that we have now. We are going to label it as SP for the shoulder point. Next, we are then going to draw the neck curve from 0 up to the neck point. So we just draw the neck curve at the back right here. And then next, we are then going to draw the shoulder seam from NP up to SP. So we draw the shoulder seam between these 2 points. Next, it says we are then going to draw the back armhole curve from SP up to the underarm, which is UP. The armhole curve has to pass through the back line, which is right here. And it has to we have to keep the curve straight for about 1 to 1.25 inches from the point here, which is on the back line. It means we are going to measure down between 1 and 1.25 inches. So let's just measure down 1 inch from this point going down, and we are just going to make a small mark like that. Now let's continue reading. And then hollow the curve through a point 1.25 from the angle. So the angle that we're talking about is this one. So it means from this angle, we are going to measure 1.25 of an inch. For those who did maths, we are bisecting this angle. We measure 1.25 inch. We make a mark like so. You can draw a straight line if you want, but it's not necessary. So next we are going to draw. So this is our armhole curve. As you can see, it was straight between those 2 points right there, and we are done. Along the hip line, we are going to measure 1/4 of the hip measurement and then mark HP. So in my case, my hip circumference is 45 inches. So remember, now we are using the hip circumference without the ease. 45 inches divided by 4, and the answer is going to be 11.25 inches. So we are going to measure 11.25 inches along the hip line. And then we're going to label this point as HP for the hip point. Next, we are then going to draw a line from UP to HP. And then next it says along the waistline, we are going to measure 3/4 of an inch inwards. We are measuring 3/4 of an inch inwards. We are then going to redraw the side seam from this point up to UP and also draw another curve from this point up to HP. So now next we are going to check the shoulder seam to make sure it is 0.5 to 3/4 of an inch longer than the shoulder measurement. Now we are going to come back to the measurements. My shoulder measurement is 5 1/8 of an inch, and we are going to measure the shoulder seam. So this line has to be larger than the shoulder by at least 0.5 or 3/4 of an inch. So if I measure this line right here, in my case it is 5 5/8 of an inch. The shoulder measurements is 5 1/8, so which means mine is larger by 0.5 of an inch, which is correct. But let's just say that this line was shorter. For example, I'm going to extend this line. I want to make it larger by 3/4 of an inch. It means this line has to be 5 7/8 of an inch. Then I'm going to measure the 5 7/8 this side, and then I place my tape measure along the line, making sure that the tape measure touches the shoulder line right here, and then I'm going to mark the new point. This would be my new SP. That is what they mean when they say you have to adjust accordingly. So now I would have to adjust this point to that point, and after marking the point, then I would have to get my ruler and place it like that, and then draw a new shoulder seam. So I would draw it like that. And after doing that, I would then have to again adjust the armhole curve. I think I was supposed to use a pencil for that. I would have to redraw the armhole curve like so. Okay. For me, this was correct. So I'm going to ignore this part that I've just done. It was just for showing you guys that what do they mean when they say you have to adjust accordingly. Okay, so we are ignoring this, and we are also ignoring that we are going to go with the original. We are done with the back, as you can see. Now we are going to be working on the front of our pattern. Now it says the bust line, the waistline, and the hip line have already been marked. So we already have the bust line, the waistline, and the hip line. Maybe we can just label them also on the front. And then next it says, mark the top of the center front as 0. This is our center front. Remember, this corner right here, we are going to mark it as our 0. Now from 0 down the center front line, we are going to mark the shoulder line, which is going to be 1.75 of an inch or 1.5 inch for larger sizes. Now I think up to maybe 42 inches you can measure the 1.75, but if you are larger than 42 inches, it means you are supposed to use 1.5 inches for the shoulder line. So in my case, I'm just going to mark 1.75 inches. And then it goes on to say, we are also going to mark the neckline, which equals the back neck width, that is the width of the neck at the back, plus 0.25 of an inch. So in my case, the back neck width was 3 inches. We are going to add 0.25 of an inch, so we will get 3.25 inches. We are measuring from 0, 3.25. And then next, we are going to measure the chest line, which is 1.5 inch from the bust line going up. So we are going to find the bust line, which is this line, and then we are going to measure up 1.5 inch. We are going to square lines to the left. The left now is this side. First, we are going to square a line halfway to the left from the shoulder line. This is my shoulder line right here. I'm going to square a line up to halfway to the left. And then I come back here. It says along the neckline, square a line that is 4 to 4.5 inches. I'm going to mark the 4.5 inches like so. And then I draw the line up to the point that I've marked. This is going to be our neckline. And then it says along the chest line, square a line halfway to the left. The chest line is this point. This is the shoulder line. This is the neckline. And then this is the chest line. And then we come back to number 4. It says along the top line, this is our top line. Along the top line from 0, mark the neck width, which is supposed to be equal to the back neck width, and then mark NP for the neck point. And in my case, the back neck width was 3 inches. So we are going to mark the 3 inches along the top line. Now, if you like, you can just draw a square. That is going to be our neck. We label this point as NP. And then we are going to draw the neck curve from NP to the neckline. And then next, we are going to measure 6.5 inches along the shoulder line for all sizes. So it doesn't matter what your bust size is. This is our shoulder line. We are going to measure 6.5 inches. And then from NP and through the point above, that is this point, we are going to draw a provisional shoulder seam that is going to be 8 to 8.75 inches long. Place our ruler from NP, make sure it crosses on this point. Draw a temporal shoulder line, which is going to be, I'll make mine 8.75 inches, like so. I make a point and thereafter I'm going to draw a line like that. Then we continue. We come back to the bust line. We are going to measure 1/4 of the chest measurement. This is the measurement that we are going to use when we are making the waist dart. I've put in brackets that you can also use half the nipple to nipple measurement. So 1/4 of the chest measurement. In my case, the chest width is 15 3/4. So now we are supposed to find 1/4 of this. But because 15 3/4 is 15.75, to avoid dividing a fraction by 4, we can just round off to 16 inches. 16, we divide it by 4, the answer is going to be 4 inches. I discovered that it's the same thing when you say the nipple to nipple measurement. It is 8 inches, so if I divide it by 2, I get 4 inches. That is why I said you can use either this or that. Along the bust line, I'm just going to measure the 4 inches and make a mark. And then next, from the last point on the bust line, we are going to measure down 3/4 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch going down. And from there, I am going to square up a line up to the shoulder. Make the line a dotted line. We are going to square up a line up to the shoulder. So we are going to make it a dotted line. And then next, from there, we are going to measure 3/4 of an inch to the left. And then we are going to draw the inner line of the shoulder dart. We are going to draw it down to the 3/4 below the bust point. We measure 3/4 of an inch. We make a mark. So we draw a straight line up to this point, which is below the bust line. And then it says measure and mark the size of the shoulder dart along the shoulder seam, that is this line, and then draw the second dart leg to the point, which is here. So in my case, the size of the shoulder dart is 3 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to measure 3 3/8 of an inch along this line. We are then going to complete the dart by drawing the last dart leg up to this point. Now that is my shoulder dart. And then next it says complete the shoulder seam by measuring the shoulder seam plus the shoulder dart and then mark SP, that will be the shoulder point. That means I come back to the measurements. My shoulder dart is 3 3/8 of an inch, and then the length of my shoulder seam is 5 1/8. So I'm going to add this number 5 1/8 and add it to the 3 3/8, and I'm going to get 8.75 8.5 inches. I'm going to mark the 8.5 inches. I'm going to mark it along this line. And then I label this point as SP for the shoulder point. And then next, on the chest line, measure half the chest measurement, leaving out the dot, and then mark the chest point, mark it CHP. My chest width is 15 and 3/4, which is 15.75. 15.75 divided by 2, and the answer was 7 7/8 of an inch. Because I'm supposed to exclude this, I'm going to start by measuring this distance right here. It is 7/8 of an inch. So I'm going to add this onto this line. So the measurement that I want to take now is 7 7/8. So from there, I'm just going to add the 7/8 of an inch that is here. So I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then make the correct mark. So the distance from here to here is this one, because it's going to be folded away with the dot. And then I'm going to mark this point as CHP for the chest point. And then now it says, draw a line between SP, that is the shoulder point, and the chest point. Draw a straight line here. It continues to say, from chest point, rule a line perpendicular to the bust line. I'm going to make sure that I draw a straight line which is at 90 degrees with the bust line. And then it says, from the center front along the bust line, we are going to measure the remaining bust width after having drawn the back pattern, and then we mark that point as the underarm point. We are going to come back to our bust circumference. Our bust circumference is 40 inches. But then I decided to add an ease of 2 inches. So the total bust circumference with ease is 42 inches. We divide the bust circumference plus ease by 2, and the answer will be 21. Now we take this 21. We are then supposed to subtract the space that has already been taken by the back right here. So it means we are going to measure the bust line for our back from UP up to the center back. And in my case, the answer is 9 7/8 of an inch. I'm going to say 21 minus the 9 7/8, and the answer will be 11 1/8. So it means along the bust line for the front, I'm going to measure 11 1/8 of an inch. Measure 11 1/8. So we make a mark. And then we are going to label this mark as the underarm point UP. And then now we are going to draw the armhole, curving it 3/8 of an inch plus, meaning it can be, we curve it 3/8 of an inch or above from the straight line of SP and CHP. To do that, we are going to find half of this line. We are then going to measure the 3/8 of an inch going inwards like that. So when we are drawing the armhole curve, it will either go through this point or slightly up above it. Now let's continue reading. And then we are going to hollow it well in the lower part through a point that is 5/8 of an inch from the angle. We are going to measure 5/8 of an inch this time from the angle right here. Make sure we find the center. You can draw a straight line if you want. And then the armhole, it dips below the bust line. This is the bust line. So the armhole will dip just below the bust line before reaching UP. Now we are going to draw the armhole curve. We use our French curve. We are going to place it and rotate it like this. Remember, it can be on this side of the point. It can't be this side. Just make sure it touches this point, and that point. And then next, we are then going to finish up the armhole curve by joining this point with UP, making sure that the curve it dips slightly below this line. So that's how it is. And then next, it says on the hip line, we are going to mark 1/4 of the hip measurement plus 0.5 inch up to 1.25 inches. This is depending on the ease. So basically the way that we've drawn our patterns, they will meet on the hip line. In short, what they're saying is that whatever, after drawing the back like that, whatever that is remaining, we are going to use it for the front. For me, the front is 11 and 5/8 of an inch. As you can see, 11 and 5/8 is slightly bigger than 11.25. So the HP for the back should be smaller than the HP for the front. Next, it says we are going to draw a straight line from HP up to UP. So we draw the straight line like so. And then next it says hollow it along the waist by 5/8 of an inch and then redraw the side seam and the curve from the waist up to the hips, just like we did on the back. So now we are going to measure inwards 5/8 of an inch on the front, measure 5/8 of an inch. So after making that mark, we are then going to curve inwards. We just draw a small curve here. We are then going to draw a curve up to the UP. And then from here, we are then drawing another curve up to HP. And then next it says for separated waist designs, that is the designs which are going to have a seam on the waistline. It says you are going to lower the waistline by 3/8 of an inch along the center front, and along the sides, you are going to lower it by 1/4 of an inch. For larger sizes, you are going to lower the waistline by 3/8 of an inch up to 1 inch along the center front, and then along the side you lower it by 3/8 of an inch. Now I consider myself to be a medium-sized person, so I'm just going to use 0.5 of an inch, which is between the 3/8 of an inch and 1 inch. So for me, I'm just going to lower it by 0.5 of an inch. I can also use the 3/4, it's also okay. It totally depends on what you want. Measure 0.5 going down and make a mark like that. And then because I used 0.5 here, on the side, I'm going to use the 1/4 of an inch. So here, I'm just going to measure 1/4 of an inch and make a mark. I'm going to do the same thing on the back. Measure 1/4 of an inch and mark. And then going to redraw the waist like so. Make sure that by the time it gets to the back, I'm here. So that's how it's going to be for the back. Now, if I'm making a top with a separated waist, then I'm going to use this new waist here. Next, we are going to draw the true bust line. The true bust line is 1.5 inches below the bust line, and then we are just going to show it for the front only. So we are going to come to the bust line, and then we measure down 1.5 inches like so. We make a mark, maybe do the same somewhere, make another mark at 1.5, and then we are going to draw a straight line. This is the true bust line. And then next it says, to get the final shoulder for the front, we are going to close out and pin the shoulder dart. It says leaving the dart folded towards the neckline. So now we are going to hold the dart like so, fold the dart. We are then going to close the dart. We are then going to create a crease. Then roll out a line between NP, that is the neck point, and the shoulder point, cutting through the folded seam. like this, making sure that you hold everything in place. We are then going to place a ruler between those two. We are going to draw a straight line like so. And then it says use a rolling wheel to trace the shoulder line to the folded paper. So we are going to use a tracing wheel. Trace the new shoulder line. Remember, we trace it onto the bottom pattern paper like that. And then it says open the dart and then redraw the shoulder line and the dart cap. So we are going to open. I'm not sure if you can see the marks of the tracing wheel right here. But if you can't, I'm just going to make the mark. This is where the tracing wheel crosses the crease. And then we are going to draw the dart cap along the marks of the tracing wheel. You see the dart legs now, they are shorter than the cap. So we are just going to extend the dart legs up to the new shoulder point like that. We do the same this line. So that is how we complete our front shoulder dart. Next, we are going to do the waist shaping. That is, we are going to create the waist darts here. To start off our waist shaping, it says on the center back, we are going to measure 3/4 of an inch as a reduction. From the center back here, we are going to measure 3/4 of an inch and we make a mark. And then we are going to join this point to the back line up there. And we are also going to join it to the hip line, maybe 3/4 along this line going down. So we are going to make use of our curved ruler. So that's how it is. This is our center back. Make a slight curve. Next, it says find the total of the waist reduction. I calculated the waist reduction on another piece of paper. We are going to try and find out how much we have to take away from the waist so that we can remain with our true waist, or rather the waist that we want. So in my case, we are going to start from the back. We are going to measure the distance between those 2 points. In my case, we have 9 inches. And then we are going to measure what we have on the front. Measure from there up to here. And what is remaining on the front is 10 3/4 of an inch. So that is why I wrote remaining waist is 9 inches. That is from the back. And then 10 3/4 of an inch. That is for the front. So in total, we are remaining with 19 3/4 of an inch. The desired waist is going to be half the waist plus 0.5, which is for ease. My total waist is 34 inches. So if you divide 34 by 2, you get 17 inches. And then we add the ease, going to be 0.5. So it will be 17.5. So this is going to be our final waist. To find the waist reduction, we are going to say the waist that is remaining currently, which is 19 3/4, we are going to subtract the 17.5, and then we are left with 2.25, which we are supposed to take away. So we have to reduce the waist now further by 2.25 inches. Now this thing is going to vary according to our different shapes and our different measurements. So I'm just showing you how you can calculate it. We are going to reduce the waist by adding some darts on the front and also the back along the waist. To add the waist dart, remember we said we are using this measurement, which is 4 inches. So I'm going to mark the 4 inches here on the front along the waistline. And also we are going to mark it along the hip line. And do the same thing on the true bust line. Next, we are going to join all these points with a straight line. We are then going to do the same for the back. We are going to mark half the nipple to nipple measurement, but we are starting from the center back. We measure the 4 inches. Also along the hip line, we do the same. We mark 4 inches. And along the bust line. And then we join all the points with a straight line. Now, as a rule for creating the waist darts, the back waist dart should not be more than 1 inch and the front waist dart should be the biggest. So I'm going to make the back waist dart to be 0.75 of an inch. So if I say 2.25 minus 0.75, I'm going to be left with 1.5. 1.5 inches. So it means the front waist dart will be 1.5 inch. I'm going to start from the back. I'm going to measure 3/8 on either side of the lines. 1, 2, 3, make a mark. And also measure 3/8 this side. And also do it for the other waistline that is below. Measure the same thing here. And then we are going to draw the dart to meet 5 inches above the waist and then 6 inches below the waist. From the waist, we are going to measure up 5 inches on the back, and then we are going to make a mark. From the waist going down, we are going to measure 6 inches and we'll make another mark. We are then going to draw the waist dart. Notice how I draw from the original waist, and then I'm going to draw from the other waistline. Then next, I'm then just going to join these two with a straight line like so. Now we come back to the front. The total for our front dart is supposed to be 1.5 inches. We are going to divide 1.5 by 2. So we are going to measure 0.75 on both sides of the dart. So we measure 0.75 this side. We mark, and then we measure 0.75 again this side. We are then going to repeat the same thing on the bottom waist. Next it says finish the dart at the top by drawing it at 4.5 to 5 inches above the waistline and also 5.5 to 6 inches below the waistline. You can use 4.5 or 5 inches at the top. I'm going to use 4.5 inches. And then at the bottom, I'm going to use maybe 5.5 inches. And thereafter, I'm going to draw my darts. We're just going to join those two. And then next we are going to add the shoulder dart at the back. So in my case, I remember I mentioned that the shoulder here is longer by 0.5 of an inch. So what I'm going to do now is that we are going to find half of this line by folding our tape measure like so. And then it says draw a line to meet the waist dart. So from that point, we are going to draw a straight line up to this point on the waist dart. And thereafter, we are going to measure the dart on either sides of the line. In my case, my total dart is 0.5. That is the difference, right? So I'm going to measure 0.25 this side and 0.25 on this other side of the line. Measure 3.5 along the center line as I'm doing now. And then we are going to draw the dart legs to finish off the dart. Then it says make sure that both the dart legs are 3.5 inches and then adjust if you have to. Usually the longer dart is the one towards the neck. I'll start by drawing that dart leg. Okay. And then we are going to use our tape measure to make sure that it is 3.5 inches. So here it is. This dart leg is usually shorter. Maybe let's start by drawing the line up to this point. If we measure this line now, we have to make sure that it is also the 3.5 inches. If you can come closer to my tape measure, you can see that already if I measure 3.5 inches, my tape measure is slightly above the shoulder line. So that is what they mean when they say adjust. I'm going to make a new point where the tape measure is ending. And then I'm going to extend the line up to the new point. Next, I will redraw the shoulder line from this new point up to the shoulder point here. This is the adjusting that they are talking about. So now I'm drawing this like so. So now this is our back shoulder dart. We are done. We can cut out the pattern. So before we cut it out, I'm just going to mark all the points that we are going to cut out. So this is our basic pattern. We are done drawing it. It is exactly the same as this one, which was done by Natalie Bray. I managed to sew together the pattern. I just wanted to show you guys how it looks. So this is how it fits my body. I hope that you like it. As you can see, it is just a perfect fit. It is made for my body. You can make your own. If you follow the exact same instructions, it will come out like mine and it's going to fit your body perfectly. If you enjoyed watching the video, give it a thumbs up and also leave us a comment in the comment section. If you are not yet subscribed, make sure that you subscribe for such videos in the future. Otherwise, God is our strength. See you next time. Bye-bye.